right. Thank you so much for that intro and for having me. I'm excited to have you here to talk about co-ops today. I'm Deborah Yashar, as Samuel said, and I'm here from the California Center for Cooperative Development, also known as CCCD. So today we're going to talk about cooperatives and specifically cooperatives in agriculture. If you have questions, if you wouldn't mind holding them or putting them in the chat, and we'll look at those after. So a little bit about my organization. We are a nonprofit 501c3, and we're dedicated to helping communities to use the cooperative model to meet their needs. So we provide technical assistance, training, and research and education to support co-ops from startup through growth. Our work spans many sectors, so there's agriculture and food systems that I work in. We also work in with worker-owned businesses, housing and manufactured home communities, childcare, consumer food co-ops, and beyond. So by strengthening co-ops across these fields, CCCD is helping to build a more resilient, equitable, and locally rooted economies. So what is a cooperative? At its core, a cooperative is a business that's jointly owned and democratically controlled by a group of people who voluntarily come together to solve a problem or to capture an opportunity. Some ways that cooperatives are different from other business models is they put member owners at the center of decisions, which yields positive results for the co-op members and their communities, ultimately making these businesses more resilient. Membership and voting. So cooperatives are controlled democratically, meaning that each member has one vote, regardless of how much the member uses or invests in the cooperative. So the members will elect a board of directors and vote on major business decisions. In other types of corporations, control is typically determined by how much a stockholder owns. So if an outside investor or a small number of outside investors own a majority of the business, then they will have the control. They will control decision making and reap the majority of the profits, even if they don't actually really use the business. Job creation and prosperity. Members can vote for their own community interests. Decision-making centers on issues such as job creation, living wages, and accessible pricing. Cooperatives can limit economic inequality and curb inefficient allocation of funds to ensure that a maximum amount of money is actually invested in the local workforce or community. So reinvesting profits. Cooperatives share profits at a higher rate than for-profit corporations through what's called patronage dividends to their member owners who are part of that cooperative. Cooperatives can also choose to reinvest profits into their business or support local suppliers and initiatives that keeps money circulating within the community where the co-op operates. So there's a lot of things that cooperatives can do. The ability to address social justice issues, development of wealth in the community, self-determination and capacity building, these can all be accomplished using the cooperative model. So one major reason that people form cooperatives is to achieve economy of scale. So in agriculture, cooperation can allow small farms to do what big farms can do, like buy inputs at bulk rates, increase volume and bargaining power to open new markets, and lower the per-use cost of equipment. You can pool resources and share expenses to allow producers to lower their costs, gain access to needed services or facilities, or generate more income. And the co-op business structure can provide a higher chance of success than managing an individual business alone because cooperatives can diffuse risk and allow for better scaling and really allow individuals to grow beyond what their individual limited finances, knowledge, skills, or labor can provide. And then number 4, access to capital. So in a cooperative, farmers can pool their capital to invest in the shared business, or in equipment or in an asset and increase their borrowing power with that combined collateral and experience. Number 5, quality of life. That's a big one. So in a cooperative, you have shared responsibilities, whether you're selling, producing, or maintaining shared resources. That can really mean a lighter load for the individual farmers because you're working together and you're part of a community that you're connected to, which a lot of farmers really appreciate because, as you may know, farming can feel you can feel pretty isolated when you're doing it all on your own. And then 6, continuity. So group entities like co-ops can serve as long-standing vehicles that can transition the land, resources, businesses among the producers to ensure that they remain in agricultural use for future generations. So there's lots of different types of co-ops. It may surprise you that co-ops are rather large in the US economy. In the US, there are actually more than 65,000 cooperatives that serve 1 out of every 3 citizens. The co-op business structure provides insurance, credit, healthcare, housing, telephone, electrical, transportation, childcare, food, consumer goods, production supplies, and utility services. More than 143 million people in the United States are credit union member owners, which are co-ops. And these credit unions have a combined total of 2.37 trillion in assets. More than 42 million residents get their power from electrical co-ops. And nearly 30% of all agricultural products are marketed by co-ops. So I'm going to go through these different types of co-ops, co-op sectors. So we have worker cooperatives, which are owned by the workers, who make the major business decisions and reap the rewards through patronage and or dividends that I mentioned. Producer cooperatives are owned by the producers, the farmers, who come together to leverage bargaining power, market together, and share profits. Consumer co-ops are owned by the consumers. So they're democratically controlled by the people who actually consume and use those goods and services. They may benefit through fairer prices, through discounts, or through access to higher quality products. So like food co-op grocery stores are a pretty common example of this type of cooperative. And then there's multi-stakeholder cooperatives, and those are really interesting because they have multiple classes or levels of ownership. So, you can have a producer, you can have a co-op that is owned by the producers and by the workers. And that would be a multi-stakeholder co-op. And then agricultural co-ops are comprised of members who share resources such as equipment or supplies, or they work together to, again, pull that bargaining power that's similar to producer cooperatives. But what's different is that they're not necessarily marketing together. So you can have different types of co-ops in agriculture. And then credit unions are community-based financial nonprofits where the amount of money invested does not determine power. Instead, each member can have a single vote and access savings and financial benefits. And then we have our housing cooperatives where members are both the owners and the residents. Again, they make democratic decisions about how in this case, to manage and maintain their property and how to set housing costs collectively. This structure gives residents greater control over their living conditions, and it protects them from sudden or unpredictable rent increases that can be tied to outside landlords. Here are the 7 cooperative principles, and these are the foundational guidelines for all cooperatives internationally. So all cooperatives follow these principles to ensure that they are operating in a fair, inclusive, and sustainable manner. I won't go into too much detail on them, but principle number 1 is voluntary and open membership. And there's democratic member control, members' economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation among cooperatives, and lastly, concern for community. And if you have questions about these, we can talk about them a little bit later. A little bit about the structure of a co-op. So the structure of a co-op is more like a circle than a top-down hierarchy, where you have the member owners. Number 1 are the member owners, and they elect the board of directors. And then the board of directors hires the management. The management oversees the employees, who in some cases are also members, such as in worker cooperatives. So this circular structure creates checks and balances, and it ensures accountability and shared responsibility throughout the cooperative. It ensures that the cooperative is accountable to its members. So here are some examples of agricultural cooperatives. Everyone's heard of Ocean Spray, Sunkist, Blue Diamond, perhaps without knowing that they're cooperatives. Most of these on this slide are examples of producer co-ops that aggregate and market together. They tend to be the most common type of cooperative in our food system. Then you have co-ops like Feed Cooperative here. Feed is based in Sonoma, and it's a food hub that aggregates, distributes, and markets local food from multiple types of producers. So some of these other co-ops on here are considered to be commodity co-ops because they're aggregating one type of product and they're able to have more power with that large volume of product versus the food hubs, which they're aggregating, but they're dealing with all types of crops, right? And in this case, Feed Cooperative is a multi-stakeholder co-op that's owned by the producers and the owner and the workers. And then down here we have supply and service co-ops like California Plowshares, which formed not too long ago to be able to share the use of and access equipment. Before we delve into some of these a little further, I want to share a little bit of historical context. So, how did agricultural co-ops gain a foothold in the US? I think it's really fascinating history. When the US economy was shifting towards industrialism in the late 19th centuries, farmers began forming cooperatives to make sure that they had access to markets and could own and control a little bit more of the value chain. As a result, farmers now own and control some of the most critical businesses that determine their own operations viability. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were lots of problems with farmers that were trying to solve. They were trying to solve problems such as volatile prices, powerful middlemen, the railroads, and really scarce affordable credit. So the co-op model offered countervailing market power by allowing them to sell and buy together and therefore have better logistics and get fairer terms. And then we have the Grange, which started as the patrons of husbandry, and they were the ones who championed the cooperative principles that were based on the Rockdale Co-op movement that was founded in England. And the Grange really helped launch hundreds of marketing and purchasing co-ops after the Civil War, which seeded the national movement. And then we have the emergence of our commodity co-ops that were able to tame those boom and bust markets and really professionalize marketing, such as the Southern California Fruit Exchange, which was later named Sunkist in 1909, the California Almond Growers Exchange, known as Blue Diamond in 1910, and California Prune and Apricot Growers that we know as Sunsweet in 1917. So these co-ops became the bedrock institutions in California's crop economy, specialty crop economy. In 1916, Congress created the Farm Credit System, so farmers and their co-ops could get reliable cooperative finance, which is still the backbone lender in U.S. ag today. And then in 1922, the Capper-Volstead Act gave farmers the limited right to act together in associations to process and market their products without being treated as illegal cartels under the Sherman Act. So the Capper-Volstead Act is the core antitrust safe harbor for producer co-ops. It really transformed the way that farmers did business, as rather than undercutting one another on price, which led to the demise of everyone, they were able to unite, to share market data, to standardize their quality and specs, to reduce price volatility, to pool volume and negotiate contracts, build their brands, and invest in their processing capacity, which allowed them to do packing, drying, distribution, and even exporting. So I'd like to put a spotlight on a couple of different types of co-ops in agriculture. This is one I chose because the business is producing a crop that gets processed into wine. So I thought it's relevant to agave. And that is Allied Grape Growers. Allied Grape Growers was founded in 1951, and it's a grower-owned wine grape marketing association co-op that represents about 500 to 600 independent grape growers throughout California. It markets members' grapes to wineries, and it negotiates and enforces contracts. It provides market intelligence and offers year-round support to strengthen grower and vintner relationships. Allied Grape Growers operates in all the major wine grape regions in California with their offices based in Fresno. So this is really a classic marketing co-op because it gives small and mid-sized growers collective bargaining power and payment protection in a volatile grape market. Okay, here's another very different type of co-op in agriculture. California Plowshares. It's a farmer-run equipment sharing collaborative. I'm not actually sure if they're incorporated yet as a co-op, but I think they're trying to go in that direction. But I thought it was worth sharing this co-op because it's very different than the other one, and it's much smaller, and they're doing something, like I said, very different. So the focus is being able to share the use of specialized tools and equipment, provide peer-to-peer training, and lowering capital costs. So they're not marketing together. California Plowshares pools and brokers access to implements such as seed cleaners, drills and spreaders, and yeah, they organize farmer-to-farmer trainings, they coordinate scheduling and storage, and that really lowers the overhead for each grower. So again, this is an example of a service supply co-op that helps small farmers adapt practices and access equipment that they would not be able to afford on their own. Let's see. So really, as people-centered businesses that operate at the heart of their communities, co-ops are tools that people have used for generations. And it goes back much further than what I shared with you. Um, to really allow people to participate in their economies and bring stability and resilience to turbulent times. So from a big picture lens to elevate cooperatives to the mainstream, we have to invest in them strategically, not just as businesses, but as movement infrastructure. So yeah, we don't only need more co-ops, but we need interconnected co-ops and systems of support that would include financing, training, and advocacy to reinforce one another, which is also known as a cooperative ecosystem. So that's sort of the conclusion of this, but again, we're going to be able to go over questions and talk a little further. And I could also share with you, if you'd like, sort of the basic steps to developing a cooperative and what is involved there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for being here. Debbie, as you were kind of presenting, we were having some technical issues on this side. The computer battery is running down, and then figuring out how to connect the computer. But I got here Jesse has one question, but so let's go there. And I have also way too many questions. One other is that if people want, also we can you can share with us some of those steps. Let's go first with that one. Is it possible to form a co-op for agriculture production, transformation, and ready to sell in the market? And I would say ready to sell product in the market.
Yes, it is. Can you say a little bit more maybe about this question?
Would you mind explaining your question?
Yeah. It's, for example, like in the industry of agave, because now in California and in other places, it's necessary to produce a good quality of agave, and then we need to transform. But the main idea is that the farmer can sell directly to the market, because is the amount of revenue is better than if they commercially, if they distribute in other channels. And the main idea is that they can sell directly to the market. And for that reason is that question, that is possible to conform a cup with these characteristics.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I would say that, there are so many types of cooperatives that can be set up to address any particular barrier or need. So the answer is yes. I think that there's different ways to go about it, right? So like you could have a co-op that would do both. It would be a co-op of producers, producer owned, and also a co-op that would handle the processing of the agave. Um, I'm not as familiar as you guys are with the industry and like what we have yet here in California, but just like any other business, it takes time and effort and research and development to put together. And you can frame it as you can set it up as a cooperative if it makes sense, if that is what the growers need, if it would meet the needs of the growers.
And Debbie, before going to Steve's question, I think that's a good point, because basically it can be set up not as one big enterprise co-op, but like 2 or 3 many small co-ops. So for agricultural production, for transformation or distillation, and then for marketing. And each of those can be perhaps the same group of board members, the same group of members, or a subset, or yes, it can be a subset throughout of it. But that's a really good point, that it's not needed only one, it can be in different parts. I actually would like to go to Steve Sanchez. How can you safeguard co-ops from concentrating too much power in one company or group in the co-op?
Let's see. How can you safeguard co-ops?
And I know Steve is there, so if you want Steve to unmute yourself and you can explain it.
Yeah, like what I was trying to ask is basically what prevents co-ops from, gaining too much power from one entity, right? Like what prevents the co-op from, I guess, being coerced into becoming like just a tool for one or individual or a group, right? Because I've seen some trade groups, like I may give the example of pomegranate trade group that markets all the pomegranates together. It's like really controlled by one group, but there's a lot of people still inside of it. So how could you safeguard a co-op from, I guess, becoming something like that, where is really dominated by one group?
Okay, thank you for elaborating. I mean, I think fundamentally, like co-ops are designed so that that wouldn't happen because they are democratic organizations, one member, one vote. That would be my answer. I mean, yeah, I think that no organization or no business structure is perfect. Co-ops are not perfect, but I think that especially for what you're describing, they are like the antithesis to that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking kind of in the same sense that I don't think in itself the co-op it is a bad thing, but the practices that a co-op or an enterprise that has a lot of that has powerful members trying to compile or monopolize one specific crop, that's what is happening. I think the co-op, what you're having in there and your 7 principles are pretty clear, but the practices or how they can pervert it, that is it. Steve, do you want to add something else?
No, I think that's a good response. I mean, I think that really just in, the formation of a co-op, you really need to make sure that everyone has equal representation, because that's sort of like a lot of the issues I think with, boards in California or agricultural groups sometimes, that a certain group might take over because they don't have that one, or one individual is one vote. They might base it off of acreage.
Steve, I will also add, and Debbie, how I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, and I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is access or the possibility to become a board member, right? So, I'm not sure if it is Because basically, I mean, if in this case for the pomegranate or others, right, when they are just having just one fixed group, when there may be way too many growers, so how other growers can access to become a board member and still one vote, one group. I think that will be on the formation, right?
Yeah, so in co-ops, like all the members don't have to be involved or vote on every single decision. But they do vote on important decisions and they do elect their board of directors, which, the board needs to be accountable to its membership. So depending on like what the goal of the co-op is, um, those sets of guidelines and actually requirements would be in their bylaws. So sort of um, like the constitution of that business is their bylaws that would explain this functionality and kind of, yeah, like I said, outline voting and who votes on what.
Yeah. And I mean, Steve always kind of bringing as we have it in there, also the counterbalances to do not become that. But I think the reality is that the spirit of co-ops, it goes towards kind of building a good for the community, not for a group, for the entire community. Anyways, we have two other questions. One from, I didn't put his name, is in the chat, is called owner. Um, I mean, and then later we'll go, actually the two of them. So how long take to integrate a co-op, and if there is any associated cost? And then the next one will be, should there be a code of conduct or ethics for co-op members stated in the statutes, in the bylaws of the co-op, or should the code of conduct or ethics be stated as part of becoming a member, an agreement as part of the membership? So three different questions, Debbie.
Sure. So yeah, let me go to this slide about what it takes to organize a co-op.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
I put 1+ years here because it really depends. How long would it take? It really depends. It depends on that particular group. It depends how well organized they are and how often they're meeting. Right? Like if they're meeting once a month versus, 2 or 3 times a month and they want to be incorporated that year, they're going to be much more driven and it's going to go faster. So let's see. So yeah, these are some of the basic kind of steps and the roadmap for developing a cooperative. So it starts with a group of people that are interested in achieving a goal together. They develop a steering committee and they start really exploring what this could look like. They are the ones that develop their business proposition. Then there should be a feasibility analysis that would look at the market and basically determine, can this be financially feasible and successful? You develop a business plan just like you would for any other business, and so on and so forth. So you had asked, what is the cost? That's a good question. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? So obviously, like if you're going to be developing infrastructure and processing equipment and all that, then there's the hard costs. But as far as developing just your business structure, sorry, I forgot to mention that the steering committee, which is how the group starts out, will eventually become that board of directors. So none of that costs money. It mostly costs time and commitment. And it's recommended for groups to have an outside advisor that can help facilitate the process. So that's something that our organization does. And how we pay for our time is we usually write grants. Sometimes we charge a fee for our service. So, depending on who's available to help you, there may be a cost for getting that business consultation. And then there's the incorporation fee, which I believe is, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's about $750 to incorporate in California. Maybe, yeah, did you want to say something, Samuel?
No. That is actually great. Thank for bringing this and being so clear on that. How long does it take? Is really up to the people, and the cost is like, I'm thinking $700-800 compared to the what I'm assuming is going to be the business is relatively small. And if it is a co-op, I mean, people can put resources together also for that. So anyway, that's good. I think
Oh
going.
yeah, and then sorry to interrupt, but um, there are fees. There's a cost to developing or getting a feasibility study, right? And getting a business plan. So I think the cost of such things also depends on the complexity of the business.
Correct. And also what you're mentioning, that institutions like you or others can either write grants or can charge depending on, as you're saying, how complex is the business. Let me actually go to Dan's question. So should there be a code of conduct or ethics for co-op members stated in the bylaws, statutes, or should the code of conduct ethics be stated as part of becoming a member, an agreement part of membership? Or is it possible to do those two things, Debbie?
Yeah, I don't think that they are exclusive of each other. Um, I think that ethics is part of the bylaws, and when you join as a member, you are usually expected to agree to sign a membership agreement that you would uphold such ethics or bylaws.
Yeah, I agree. And I was thinking the same, David, that it can be not necessary either. It can be both, right? That, or can be one of those. But I think that is stated, agreed when the members they are coming together, right? So it is, I mean,
Yeah.
it is the will of the members. Let me go first to Marta. Marta, thanks for joining. Yeah, I think we have some hiccups on the hour. Don't worry, but thanks for joining us, Marta. And so, can one co-op work with others and partner for services and grants? So I think you mentioned it in one of those that it can be different co-ops and they can work together. Debbie?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to go to this slide here because it is one of the co-op principles. Principle number 6, which is actually my favorite, and that is cooperation among cooperatives. And it's one of the really cool, it's one of the aspects of my work that I most enjoy. We're not just being insular in our organization, but we're collaborating with all different co-ops that are also collaborating. And that is really how we develop a co-op ecosystem that's, for mutual benefit. Because we're stronger together, and what one co-op might offer, another co-op doesn't. And so again, more opportunities for supporting each other in collaboration. And to know that, because cooperatives have these principles, that you're supporting something for the good. So it makes for stronger stronger like foundation to the collaboration. And then can one co-op work with others in part?
No,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No. I was thinking on So you may have other questions there. I was Steve Sanchez, can co-ops lobby?
Hmm. I'm not positive of the answer to this one. I would think that they could. Do you know, Samuel?
I mean, I think, I mean, it is a specific or a special type of business, but I think as any other business or as any other individuals, we can express our interest to our elected officials. I don't see why not a co-op can express their specific interest to an elected official, because co-op,
Yeah, it might depend on like how much activity is put towards lobbying. If the co-op is focused on lobbying, then it may not, m- maybe shouldn't be incorporated as a co-op, but should be something else, like a 501 something else.
yeah. And, but you're correct. I think yes. So just to differentiate, like expressing the opinions rather than functioning as a lobby agency. And I think
Exactly.
you are
Yeah.
correct. Yes. Yeah. Advocate. Thank you, Marta. Yes. I mean, like,
Yes,
and but I,
definitely.
and I think Debbie, that the advocate, I mean, the principles that you have in there, it's just part of being socially, environmentally, culturally responsible, right? To have democratic membership and control, autonomy and independence, education and training, cooperation and more. So this is going towards that, being responsible with the members, but also with the community. I think that that's what is important about co-ops. Um,
Indeed.
we have a question also. Other question here for Jessie.
Another question for me.
Yeah, Jessie really wants to get her time out of
No,
out of
yeah,
you. So
really.
in the questions about tax, co-ops have different types of taxes, or do they pay different taxes in California, or is it the same?
So it depends on the type of cooperative, and I'm not an expert on this, so thanks for putting me on the spot with taxes. Um, I know that like with an agricultural co-op, there are benefits to being incorporated as an agricultural cooperative. There's actually tax benefits. And let me see if I can explain. Um, I don't know if I could really like explain it well right now, but I can definitely share more information about that with you if you'd like.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't want to know all the details right
Yeah,
now of the
no,
tax code,
no,
because
no, no.
it's what everyone is really looking forward on their lunch time to be being informed about taxes.
So
But
sorry.
no, but yeah, we can respond those later. One thing that it comes to my mind, Debbie. So I'm really pro co-ops. I really, but so, and you know some of the co-ops in California, but how can others know about co-ops? Is there a list, or how can we find co-ops in California?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, yeah, like as we talked about, it's not always clear like who is a co-op and who isn't. But if you do know about cooperatives in your community that you can join, that's a great that's a great entry point to get exposed to co-ops and co-op culture. Like if you have a food co-op, there's a few food co-ops in California. I don't know if you may not all have one where you live. Of course, there is one here in Davis Food Co-op. Um, you could sign up for CCCD's newsletter. I don't know if you can do it on our website, but we also put on this I think really great annual conference for anyone who wants to learn more about co-ops, and that's called the California Co-op Conference. It usually happens in May. So yeah, this next year will be in May, in Los Angeles. You're all invited. Yeah, the more you kind of like delve into co-ops, the more you'll learn that there is this network. Another organization that does advocacy for co-ops that I would recommend looking at is called NCBA, National Co-op Business Association. Those are just a couple off the top of my head.
And I might be putting Katie on the spot, but I think that's how Katie Herzog attended one of those California co-op meetings or agricultural meetings, and that's how we were able to get
Yeah,
to know you, Debbie.
Katie actually came to our agricultural cooperatives leadership conference, which is pretty different than the California Co-op Conference because it kind of caters to these larger ag co-ops. Only because it offers education and professional development for boards of directors that are for well-established co-ops. And the California Co-op Conference, which is for all different sectors, is more open to like anyone who's starting a co-op, so more smaller co-ops and new co-ops.
Once again, Jesse, trying to get the most out of our time with you. But it's a good question, really. What do you consider are the principal challenges for co-ops?
Honestly, this is also like a little maybe outside of my expertise, but I mostly work with small, like in terms of like what the principal challenges are for co-ops in general. I mostly work with small scale farmers, and so through that perspective, I think um, sometimes like especially like working with underserved farmers, they don't always realize their power and their capacity to, become the owners of a cooperative. Um, and so I think, yeah, just like working with different communities, the co-op development experience can really vary. Um, let's see. I think one of the more widely known challenges to co-ops is being able to access capital. In a way, co-ops can access capital more easily than just one farmer alone. But when you compare a co-op to other types of businesses, it's sometimes harder to access capital because there's more there isn't a liability among the members. So if the business fails, the co-op business fails, I believe each member is not liable. And so banks are more hesitant to loan to co-ops. And so co-ops can definitely access capital, but it's a little bit more narrow in terms of who will loan to them. CDFIs are institutions that specifically lend to co-ops, and it's in their charters. They exist to support co-ops. And so those are what you want to look to as a co-op.
And Debbie, I don't know, as I'm just keep an eye on the clock. We're just getting close.
Yes.
But I go back to what you were mentioning or highlighting some of what you're mentioning on in terms of that sometimes people do not realize how much power they have by pulling resources, time together, and that I mean people can be entrepreneurs. In this case of something that is actually quite very valuable for our society, which is co-ops, these democratic organizations. So anyway, I just want to highlight that comment. Just to closing this out, Debbie, any last comment, question, something that you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to just add one more aspect to what is a challenge for co-ops. And I think that even though they are part of our economy, they're not part of our mainstream sort of awareness. They're not something that we're taught about in school. They're just not really part of mainstream culture. And so it's a bit of a stretch sometimes for people to really grasp and embrace the concept of cooperatives and then feel like they can be part of one or even helps, form one. Because again, it's like it's not something we're all very familiar with. So I think that's something that, I hope will change. And oftentimes co-ops do gain traction, and the idea of co-ops gain traction during difficult times. So like they really are getting more attention now. So I guess that's one of the positive aspects of what we're going through right now.
But
Thank you.
David, thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation, for your time, the candid conversation, but also insightful. I do agree. I
Thank
mean,
you.
unfortunately, this is not in the mainstream. Also, thank everyone for joining us. What I'm thinking is that we'll figure out the sharing of the video. But in the meantime, thanks everyone. Good seeing. We'll see you next time on our following seminar.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.